For a long time, I thought if I can just explain better, maybe they'd understand. Maybe they stop calling me selfish. Maybe they stop making me feel like a bad person for simply needing something different. But here's the truth I had to face. Some people don't misunderstand you because you're unclear. They misunderstand you because your clarity threatens their control. So today, I'm sharing 5 things I stopped explaining after I started setting boundaries with my family. Because some explanations are just another way we abandon ourselves. And maybe you'll recognize yourself in these too. Number 1, why I don't answer every call or message right away. I used to feel so guilty if I didn't instantly respond, even when I was overwhelmed, even when I needed space. Because growing up, responsiveness meant love. If you didn't pick up, you were disrespectful. If you waited, you were avoiding. I remember one Sunday, I saw a text come through from a family member, and I was in the middle of reading a book, sitting next to my husband with my Boston Terrier. We were curled up in the couch. It was peaceful. It felt grounded, finally feeling like myself. And yet I felt a wave of anxiety over me. That voice in my head said, you should reply. They're going to say you're ignoring them. But for once I didn't. I put the phone down and stayed present in the moment. And you know what happened? Nothing. The sky didn't fall. My peace didn't crumble. The only thing that cracked was the illusion that I had to earn love with urgency. Of course, later I heard the classic line, you're acting distant now that you think you're better than us. But here's what I've learned. Their urgency is not my emergency, and their discomfort with my silence doesn't mean I'm doing something wrong. Now, I don't explain why I need time before responding. I don't over-apologize or send long texts about being so busy. Because the truth is, being available 24/7 doesn't prove love. It proves burnout. And if someone ties your word to how quickly you reply, they're not really seeing you. They're managing their own anxiety through you. Number 2, why I need space after family gatherings. For a long time, I couldn't understand why I feel so emotionally drained after a gathering or a visit. Everyone was nice, no one was yelling, the pictures looked happy, the table was full. But I come home with my nervous system just buzzing like I had just survived something huge. I remember one gathering in particular, we were all under the same roof trying to reconnect. I had hope for laughter and ease, but instead I felt this invisible tension in the air, like I was walking through an emotional minefield. There were passive-aggressive comments disguised as concern. No one really asked how I was actually doing, but I was expected to smile, play along, and make it nice. When I got home, I collapsed on the couch, and my husband looked at me and said, that wasn't a vacation, that looked like survival. And he was right. I wasn't just tired. I was emotionally bruised from playing a version of myself I no longer recognize. I used to feel like I had to explain it. Nothing happened, I'm just tired. Or worse, maybe I'm just too sensitive. But no, I'm not too sensitive. I'm someone who feels the unspoken, the tension, the judgment behind the smiles, the pressure to play a role I've outgrown. And of course, I've heard things like, you act like being around us is a burden. Or, we were just trying to include you. But inclusion without respect is just exposure to more pain. Now, I no longer explain why I need to decompress. I don't feel the need to apologize for taking space afterward. That's my boundary. That's my care. That's my peace. And I don't need to justify it to anyone anymore. Number 3, why I no longer participate in certain conversations. There are certain topics I just won't engage in anymore. Gossip, shaming, criticism disguised as concern, conversations where people talk at me, not with me, where the goal isn't connection, it's control. where I'm expected to nod, smile, and co-sign emotional dysfunction just to keep the peace. And for a long time I did. I sat there and let the words swirl around me like smoke. I stayed quiet when someone made a snide remark about a family member not being as strong as us. I bit my tongue when someone used religion as a weapon to shame someone else's choices. I laughed at the stories that weren't funny because I was afraid of being labeled difficult. I used to try to explain, that makes me uncomfortable, or I'm working on protecting my energy. But here's what I've learned. People who want to understand will, and people who don't will twist your boundary into an insult. Now I simply disengage. I excuse myself. I change the subject. I let the silence do the talking. Sometimes I just leave the room. Other times I leave the relationship entirely. Because you don't have to keep showing up to conversations that insult your growth. My energy is no longer a classroom for someone else's emotional immaturity. I don't need to sit in dysfunction just to prove I'm loyal. Loyalty without boundaries is just self-abandonment, my friends. And I'm no longer available for that version of me. Number 4, why I no longer defend myself in family drama. When you're the scapegoat, you don't get to be the fixer. You're not the one they run to for comfort. You're the one they blame when things fall apart. And it's subtle at first. They'll make you the problem without ever saying your name. They'll talk around you, about you, like you're a storyline they all agree on. And if you try to speak up or set a boundary, suddenly you're the one tearing the family apart. For years, I believed if I could just explain better, if I could be nicer, quieter, less offensive, maybe they'd stop painting me as the issue. Maybe they see my heart. But here's the truth I finally had to admit to myself. It didn't matter how much love I gave. It didn't matter how often I forgave. They weren't looking to understand me. They were looking for someone to carry the family's shame. And I was the easiest one to assign it to because I refused to play the role they wrote for me. I remember being accused of being cold and cruel because I didn't attend a gathering where my boundaries had been repeatedly crossed. I didn't yell, I didn't gossip, I just said no. And that was enough to make me the villain in a story I didn't even co-write. So I spent years defending myself in conversations I never agreed to have, trying to prove I was good, trying to win back people who were committed to misunderstanding me, trying to earn the right to be treated with basic dignity. Until I realized I wasn't protecting peace, I was pleading for dignity. Now I don't defend myself. I don't explain why I walk away from drama. I don't justify why I don't answer group texts or accept invitations I know are steeped in control or gossip. I don't clarify or correct their version of the story anymore because I understand now. Their version of me is not my responsibility. Their projections are not my truth. And I'm not here to be their emotional scapegoat. I'm here to heal. I'm here to rest. I'm here to break generational patterns, even if that makes me the villain in someone else's script. And healing doesn't require anyone's permission. Number 5, why I'm doing things differently now. Whether it's how I protect my peace, how I show up in relationships, how I spend my energy, or how I move through this world. I'm not here to copy-paste old patterns just because they're familiar. I'm not here to perform in a family play where everyone pretends nothing's wrong. And I'm definitely not here to keep sacrificing myself for the comfort of people who never made space for my truth. I used to feel like I had to write a whole thesis every time I said no, why I was breaking cycles, why I was in therapy, why I didn't go to the family function, why I was setting boundaries with certain people, why I no longer shrink myself to keep the peace. And every time I made sure to soften the truth so no one felt offended, to clarify that I wasn't judging them, I was just choosing me. But the truth is, if someone takes your healing personally, that says more about their unhealed wounds than your growth. Because what I've learned is this: you don't owe anyone a backstory for your peace. You don't have to explain your joy, your rest, your no, or your glow up. You don't have to justify evolving out of roles that were never meant for you in the first place. Some people won't get it because your healing highlights their avoidance. Your boundaries interrupt their ability to manipulate. Your growth reminds them of their stagnancy, but their resistance is not your responsibility. Their discomfort is not your debt to pay. That's not your burden to carry. What I wish I knew sooner, if I can go back and tell my younger self one thing, it would be this: you don't have to perform to deserve peace. You don't need to keep explaining your heart just to be believed. You don't need to keep trying to be what they say they want. You're allowed to become who you were born to be. You are not here to be understood by people who only listen to judge. You are here to be free. So here's what I want you to remember. You are allowed to be clear. You are allowed to change. You are allowed to stop performing emotional labor for people who refuse to grow it with you. And if your boundary makes someone uncomfortable, that's information. Let them sit with it. Let them wrestle with the silence. Let them come face to face with what they project onto you. Because every time you stop over-explaining, you teach your nervous system this: I am safe to protect my peace. And that's something no apology can replace. If any of this hits home for you, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment and share what's something you stopped explaining once you start setting boundaries. My friends, your voice matters. Your clarity matters. It might just be the reminder someone else needs today. You're not too much. You're not selfish. You're not cold. You're just finally coming home to yourself. Until next time, my friends.